Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. Anthony Chaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. But for those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25%. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I'm here again with the Plant-Free MD podcast. And today I have a special guest and a personal success story from Irvin Dazl over in St. Louis. Is that right? You're still in St. Louis?
No, I live in Canada. St. Louis is my last name.
Oh, St. Louis.
I live in
Yeah. That's a good last name. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in, that's right. You're in Montreal. Is that right?
Yeah, Montreal. Exactly.
Okay. All right.
I'm wearing the Expos.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you had a pretty interesting story. You were saying that you were telling me online that you had a very interesting lead up to what you came to carnivore. You were actually vegan for 21 years. Is that right?
Exactly. I actually started my vegetarian vegan lifestyle in 95, 96. And I held on to that up until 2017. And I really thought that I had found the promised land of nutrition, and that I was like in the best health of my life until I discovered recently the carnivore lifestyle.
So what got you into getting into vegan all that time ago? What was the influence?
Well, listen, at the time I was reading a lot of literature. We're talking about the mid-90s. So I was reading some stuff, and I was also watching videos. I discovered a guy named Dr. Sebi. That was actually in the late 90s. It was probably a few years within my vegetarian lifestyle. You must have heard of him. He's not a real doctor, but we called him Dr. Sebi. He's very influential and known in the quote unquote African American community. So he was a guy that kind of influenced me. There was another guy before him named Layla Africa who passed away also. They were holistic doctors. And so these guys kind of influenced my journey into being vegan and vegetarian. But the first time I became vegan is because I read a book, a Buddhist book. It's funny because I'm not even a Buddhist. I'm actually a Christian. And I read a Buddhist book, and it sounds so philosophical and so nice about, you had to be a vegetarian and vegan. And, I kind of like the philosophy and influenced my decision of becoming a vegan,
Yeah. And were you having any health issues at the time, or did you just think like, oh, this is a good idea. It makes sense what these guys are saying?
Funny enough, no health issues at the time. I just thought that what they were saying was really, sounded good. So I kind of went through with this. So I kind of saw the benefits of it in the sense of I was very active at the time. I was a dancer. I was doing a lot of performances, shows, and all that stuff. And I mean, I was young, so it felt good at the time, and I just held on to it, And I did not realize my issues till really later on. And that's when, listen. I was a guy who used to go to the bathroom at least minimum 5 times a day. And I thought that was a great thing. I thought to me that was like, wow, that was a superpower. I'm releasing everything. I'm not keeping no waste in my body. Everything is going out. So I used to speak about this like I was the proudest guy about this, but until I realized it's actually IBS, and so I was like, man. So literally until until 5 months ago, I was going to the bathroom a minimum of 5 times a day, minimum. So some days I'm 8, 9 times in a day, and it's no lie. And like I said, I prodded myself thinking that it was a good thing until I realized it's not a good thing.
Yeah. And you said that 21 years, that's a long time. Were you taking supplements during that time? And
I did here and there try to take supplements. I would dabble in fish once in a while. I would fall into fish.
Mhm.
I had cut dairy products. So
Mhm.
for at least a good, I would say, good 20 years, I was without dairy products. Once in a while, I would dip into cheese here and there, and I would feel the effect in my stomach. So I felt that maybe I was lactose intolerant.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't really go too much into cheese, but here and there I would go into fish. Fish is the
Mhm.
only thing I would go back and forth with. But yeah, that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah. Did you notice that that had any effects on your health?
Um, Physically, I have to say no.
Mhm.
However, psychologically is what I could say today. I could speak with confidence and say
Mhm.
it did have an impact on me, because physically since I was a guy that was very, very active.
Mhm.
uh I could send you a picture later on to see how I look. I was very fit, I was very cut, very
Yeah.
lean. Like I said, I danced and trained 7 days a week, so I was very, very fit in terms, physically speaking. But I had, and this is what got me into carnivore. I'm kind of jumping, but
Mhm.
it's the brain fog thing is what caught me. It's not even the physical aspect or it's the brain fog thing. Once I heard brain fog, I was like, wait a minute, this is what I was feeling the whole time that I was vegetarian. I felt like I had something going on in my brain, but I could never explain it. I just thought that maybe it's just something that I have and
Mhm.
that I'm going to live with, for the rest of my life, and I'm still functioning, so it should be okay. But I realized that brain fog is something that carried me throughout the whole time, and I could never put my finger on what it was. And that's what clicked to me when I started watching some of the carnivore content that I seen.
Oh, interesting. So what made
Yeah.
you, I think you said you came back to meat, what, like 6 years ago, is that right?
Yeah, about 2017. I mean, next year will make it 6 years.
Mhm.
2017 is when I went back. I came back to meat.
Mhm.
And Dr. Chaffee, I just one day after being vegetarian vegan for 20 years,
Mhm.
out of the blue, one day I got a massive craving where I couldn't even control myself, and it's like my body was calling for meat, and I just got up that day, and I just went to the restaurant, and I bought like 2 pieces of chicken. And I think
Mhm.
I went to a Haitian restaurant, I bought 2 pieces of chicken and rice, and that's how I started eating meat again.
Yeah.
And that was it. That's how I just went back to meat. My body just, I couldn't control it. I had never had this kind of craving. I was like, what's going on? I need this. I can't. My body was just asking for it. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just and I just started eating meat again. You know.
Did you notice a difference after that, after you started incorporating meat back in?
Well, one thing I noticed first of all, I muscle wise, I became way more muscular.
Mhm.
It was much easier for me to gain muscle mass. Strength wise, I was much stronger. I'm much stronger now than I was in my 20s. This is something I definitely noticed.
Mhm.
So those are the two things that I noticed, and I gained a little bit of weight because I started eating. The first thing I introduced with the meat was eggs, so I started eating it a lot. Before I started eating meat, I introduced eggs. So I noticed that with the eggs, I kind of gained weight. I was like, "What's going on?"
Hmm.
Like my arms got a little bigger, and I still was lean, but my arms got a little bigger. My chest was getting big. I was like, "What's going on?" So then a little bit after that, I went into the meat, and like I said, I saw that physically speaking, my musculature was much greater than it was before, and that's something I noticed that I was struggling, even though I was lean and pretty fit. I couldn't get too muscular. That's something I mean, I may have looked, but I wasn't getting. I couldn't keep the muscle mass. So I noticed that once I started eating meat again, it kind of stayed.
Nice. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so what made you were saying that it was mostly the brain fog that made you want to try carnivore full on, is that right?
Yep, exactly. I think I watched the first person. One of my friend, Julio, sent me a video about of Dr. Baker. He actually sent me his IG page, and I started watching him. I mean, earlier this year in January, and I was like, okay, wow, so this guy's pretty
Yeah.
intense. Like just meat. I was like, man, and I saw how big he was. I said, okay, but I really started getting into it in, I would say, April and May. April is when I started watching more content, and that's when I fell on you. I
Mhm.
fell on your videos. You're the second guy I fell on, and you and Dr. Barry pretty much around the same time. And I
Mhm.
started eating your contents, and I was like, man, these guys are on point. Like you guys were coming with receipts. And I was like, man, there's nothing I
Yeah.
could say. I was like, there's nothing I could say about this. I mean, listen. So I watched your videos for about, I would say, a solid 4 months. I would
Oh,
regurgitate your content at least 4 to 5 hours a day for 4 months before I say, you know what, enough is enough. I've heard enough. Let me just try this. I mean, these guys are talking, but let me until I try it, I won't know. And mid-August is when I started. I said, let me just go full on. I noticed one of I advised one of my friends. And I said, listen, man, you should. I just fell into something. I've been watching it for at least 6, 7 months. I don't know, man. You should look into it. So he started looking into it, and me and him we started together. We
mhm.
started the thing together, and since then it's history, man. This
That's
is it.
awesome. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. So how
yep.
have you been feeling since? Like, what are the results?
Listen, I've been feeling fantastic since mid-August. I've lost. Listen, I didn't do this to lose weight, but I've lost 45 pounds.
Wow.
I'm 6'2". I was about 296 pounds when I started this.
Mhm.
Listen, I, I, I wasn't in the best shape of my life, to be honest. I hadn't been training in a while because of pains, like joint pains, my knees. I was like, it was to a point where I couldn't even do regular squats without any weights. I couldn't even do
Yeah.
regular squats anymore because of my knees, inflammation in my knees, my ankles. I had plantar fasciitis in both of my feet that manifested, I would say, less than a year after I turned vegan. I think the same year that I started eating meat again, my fasciitis started, and I was plagued with this until I would say last year. So it was intense, both of my feet. So it was really hard for me to push my training the way I used to. My both of my arms, I had tennis elbow, golf elbow, and I'm a guy who used to do 20, 30 pull-ups, no
Mhm.
issues. I had to stop at least 3 years ago. I had to stop because the pain was too much. So I was only doing push-ups. So I kind of gained weight. I gained a tummy, my belly. I had a Dunlap belly, like Dr. Berry likes to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I stand up and look down, I couldn't even see my knees. It was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was really bad. I was like, oh man. So I lost that. My belly's gone. I'm seeing my packs again. They're back. I'm like, wow, okay. And that's not even the reason why I started doing this. My brain fog completely gone. I
Mhm.
noticed my brain fog gone within the first month. It was gone. And I was like, something is up, something is going on. I'm not feeling this weird, like this cloud around my head anymore. And that was completely gone within the first month. I kept on saying this to my girl. I said, listen, this whole thing, I've had this brain fog for years, at least 25 years, and it's gone now. It's crazy. It's really gone, and it hasn't come back. So those are the main things I could say. I feel like a completely different person, Dr. Chaffee. I don't. I'm more patient, less irritated. Like I said, I'm more focused, more clear-minded, and that's absolutely something that's what really blows my mind. More than the physical stuff, it's the psychological stuff for me. I'm completely blown away by that.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember the same thing, like with brain fog. I remember when I was getting ready for my MCATs, I normally would eat just a lot of meat anyway. I wasn't really heavy on carbs, certainly not vegetables. I would mostly just eat meat anyway. And I remember when I was getting ready for my MCATs, it was just because it was just quick and easy. I was just getting like whole grain pasta. I was just eating that, and I had brain fog all the time, and I couldn't figure it out. I thought it was like allergies or something, and I thought I was just tired all the time and just felt dopey and tired and weird, and I didn't know what was going on. I would wake up fine. I'd had plenty of sleep, and then just halfway throughout the day, it was just dopey and tired. And I look back, well, that was when I was eating. I would eat some of this grain stuff, and my brain would just shut off, and it was very difficult. And yeah, I haven't had any of that problem since then. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's really, really, really amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, like I said, I have my friend that started this with me. He's telling me the same thing, and he was on, I think, on antidepressant, if I'm right, and he's diminished his antidepressant like tremendously. I think I think he spoke to me last week, and he said that he was about to completely get rid of them. But
Mhm.
he same thing as me. He's telling me the same thing. We're going back and forth about the symptoms that we used to have, how we feeling right now, and it's very very similar. And it's good to have a partner where you could bounce back and see the similarities of what's happening to you guys. And then we're like, man, this is what's going on. Like, where have we been all this time? Like, we've been lied to, and this is absolutely like we've been red pill with this whole nutrition thing, man. You know, we came out the matrix, and this is really really mind boggling. And it's crazy because it's something I announced it to my children last week. They came because they don't live with me. They live in Toronto,
Mhm.
so they came to see me last week, and I announced to them that, yeah, listen, I'm carnivore now. I don't eat no vegetables, and I I practically not eat no fruits at all. And they were like, what? Because I raised them to be vegetarian. So
Right.
some of them were, yeah. So it was like they were like, what? What's going on, pops? Are you okay? My 19-year-old was like, your heart is okay? Is your heart okay? I was like, honey, I'm
Yeah.
fine. Trust me, I feel better than ever. And so, but that's my only regret, man. I
Mm.
really, I'm like, that's my biggest regret, that my kids are like I raised them as vegetarian. Now I realized, man, that was the biggest mistake. And I was thinking of doing good for them,
Yeah.
but it turned out that I was completely in the wrong, man. And I admit that today, and I realized that today.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
but but at the same time, it's probably better than a lot of people because even though it's vegetarian, at least you're probably thinking whole foods. I mean, it's not like it'd be like,
yes,
processed garbage and candy and things like that, which are all vegetarian. At least it's going to
yes,
be whole food, things that you cook yourself, and having that conscious
yes,
awareness of putting good things in your body. So at least the concepts are there. Now you can just sort of switch the angle and direction of that.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
listen, I was a huge ideologue when I was a vegetarian. Like, listen, you could not eat meat in my house.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how bad I was. I was like, for me, meat is the devil. Like, you
Yeah.
eat meat, you are going to die. You're gonna get all these sickness. And I used to throw people out of my house if they were eating meat. I said, you go eat that shit outside. You don't eat that in my house. That's how bad it was. And I mean, I have some friends who probably listen to this. They'll relate to that because they were there. They're like, oh my god, this guy. So that's how bad. So for me to have made the switch, believe me, if I made the switch, anybody can make the switch. Because I
Yeah.
mean, I was bad. I really thought that I had found the promised land. I was in the Garden of Eden. This is it. This is the way to eat. Human beings should not be touching anything dead. If you touch
Yeah.
anything dead, you're evil. I mean, I was one of those crazy vegans. Put it that way. I was one of those guys.
That's
Yeah, I
funny.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
was.
so you were saying like you had a whole bunch of joint pains as well, and the plantar
Oh yeah.
fasciitis. Has that improved since cutting the
Listen,
plants?
I mean, Dr. Chaffee, my knee pain is completely gone. My ankle, my fasciitis is gone.
Mhm.
Um, I used to give. I mean, I still give classes, but I mean, let's say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, there was this contract that I used to have on every fall, where I used to go to Quebec City and teach like 7 to 8 classes for my weekend.
Mhm.
The first year that I did it, it was only 5 classes, and I would go on a Saturday, back-to-back classes, and man, I would come back home, my fasciitis would flare up, and I'd be in pain for a whole week. I couldn't.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was really, really bad. My joints, my knees. I would walk home and I'd have to take Epsom salt bath, and it was
Mhm.
terrible.
Yeah.
This year, I did the same exact contract. I was giving 7 classes for my weekend. Uh, no soreness, no fasciitis flare up, no knee problem. I would outlast these kids that were three times half my age, or 3 times younger than me, and I would come back from the weekend on the Monday. I had another class on the Monday. I had class on the Tuesday. I had class on the Wednesday. I had class on the Thursday. Never feel any pain. Never feel any soreness. So that's gone.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
that's gone. And
Yeah.
I'll be 48 years old in about what, a month. That's February 2nd. I'll be 48 years old. You know,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
I
And that's the
and I'm
that's the
feeling
thing.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say plantar fasciitis is nasty too. I
Oh,
thankfully not really had to deal with that, but it's I've had a lot of friends that have had that and had a lot of problems with it. And the treatment for that medically are steroid injections into the sole of the foot, which is very thick tissue.
man.
And so, have you ever had one of those horrible things?
Oh no, 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 no,
Oh,
no! I didn't
good.
want to do none of that.
Yeah,
I didn't want to do none of that. I was like, you know what? I had what you call it, insoles for my shoes
yeah.
that the doctor gave me, and I wore those. There was some massages I had to do. I just tried to go as natural as possible with it. I switched shoes. I used to wear like Nikes. I switched shoes. It wasn't working for me, so I went into I got other shoes, New Balance shoes that was better for my knees and for my fasciitis. So I just switched my shoes, did my little rituals for massages for my feet, took breaks, did not
Mm.
do when I was giving classes instead of going full out, I'd go 5, 10%, so I had to go around it.
Yeah.
But now I don't even have to go around it anymore. Now
Nice.
I could do my squats like I used to. I could do jump like I used to. I could even run. I had stopped running for at least 3 years. I couldn't even run, do nothing running, nothing jumping. I couldn't do none of that because it would flare up my fasciitis. It was bad. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. And I think it's one of the reasons also why I had gained so much weight. Also, I wasn't doing what I used to, and I kept on eating the carbs and a lot of carbs, a lot of fruits, a lot of bananas. Bananas was my favorite. Used to eat like 3 to 5 bananas every day, my smoothies, and so it was crazy. And I stopped all that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, those injections are for people that don't know, that's considered the second most painful injection in medicine is a plantar fasciitis
Ooh,
ones. Yeah, yeah,
wow.
yeah.
Ooh,
I forget what the first one is, but that was when I was doing rotation orthopedics in medical school. We would do those, and that was what was said. It was like the second most painful injection, and you'd see people, and they were not happy getting that that injection, but it would take care of it for 3 months, and then they'd have to come back and get it again, and they just hated it. Yeah,
wow,
yeah, I did not want to deal with that ever. I never wanted to have to get that thing again, or ever get it done myself. Yeah, that looked horrible.
wow.
Well, that's awesome, man. And you were saying that uh, that you said that you had there were some mental issues and some actually even some depression issues that you went through as well. And obviously, anything too sensitive, please feel free to not go into. But if you're comfortable, you mentioned that there were some serious depression issues that you were dealing with as well. Is that right?
Yeah. In 2016, December 2016, December 3rd, 2016, my mom passed away.
Oh, I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
yeah, thank you. And that was a big rock, in my life that went away. But the thing is, it didn't kind of I kind of, and that's the first time I kind of really realized how deep the brain fog was because throughout the time, the first 2 weeks, I felt like I was living in a cloud.
Mhm.
Obviously, I was mourning, but that intensified. Then my depression manifested, I would say, maybe a year after she passed away, year and a half after she passed away. And I had some issues also with my kids. They were living with me, and so then they left. They got a little older. They left. It was a bad situation between me and them. It wasn't cool. I kind of felt depressed, and for a whole year, Dr. Chaffee, I used to take a train to go teach a class that I had downtown because I live a little bit on the outskirts. It's not really the suburb, but it's on the outskirts. So you have to take like a train to go out. I wasn't using my car because it was easier for the commute. So I would take the train, and for a whole year, I visualized myself jumping in front of that train for a whole year.
Oh,
I would sit there, and I would say, my life is a failure. I failed my kids. My mom passed away. I have nothing holding me. I had my last relationship. I failed also. So I wasn't really in a relationship with no one. So I was for a whole year. I replayed and I replayed and I replayed the scenario. And I even thought about what I was going to write for my letter. And, and and I did not realize. I said, I'm also a very religious guy, and I said, what would God think if I did something like that? That was my first instinct. Then my second one was like, what kind of legacy would I leave for my kids? So So then I at the time I used to drive buses for the city. So I contacted there was a what you call it, a thing for workers that to help
Yeah.
employees if they have depression. So I contacted the people there, and they called me right away. We booked an appointment the next day. So I went to see a therapist, and from there I started seeing a therapist for months. Then it
Mhm.
calmed down. But that was the first time that I actually really thought of doing something like that.
Mhm.
And and like I said, I had to go see the therapist. But the suicidal thoughts, though, had been going through my mind the whole 20 years that I was a vegetarian. It's something that I was really ashamed. I
Mhm.
never said it to nobody. I never spoke about it. But it is something that actually went through my mind throughout the whole time. But that was the first time that I went through depression. I had to stop work for at least 3 months and see a therapist. That was the first time that I actually contemplated of doing the action of killing myself. You know,
Wow. And how are you doing now?
man, I'm great. I
Good.
it's the last thing on my mind is thinking of taking my life or
Mhm.
dying. I don't want to die. I want to live forever. I feel like I could live forever now.
Yeah.
So I mean, listen, I feel like I have a second win. I feel like a different person. I also feel that so much decision and so much things that I went through. I was like, man, if I was in that state of mind, there's no way I could have been fully taking fully conscious and clear-minded decisions, you know. So the way I feel now, I'm like, it's like I want to tackle life with with a new bounce, with a new energy, with a new flair, you know. So this is how I feel right now. No way I feel my brain fog. No way I feel any form of depression. Like I said, I think things through differently now. I process things differently. I don't let things stress me like they used to. I accept things, and I just flow with certain things, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
good, man. Yeah. Well, I'm really
yeah.
sorry to hear that you went through that. I'm very happy that things are better now. That's great.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy too. And trust me, I am. Especially for my children. You know,
Yeah.
and that was one of the main things. I was like, what am I? And that's one of the things that kind of stopped me from doing this. Is like, what am I? What are they gonna say? Like, once it's done, there's no coming back. And that's the legacy I'll leave for them. You know, they've never heard me say that. They're probably gonna hear this story from this podcast before they hear it from me, because I've never said that to them. You know, I've never talked to them about this. You know?
Yeah. And so when did you when did you come out to your kids as carnivore? When when was that? Is that just recently?
Last week.
Yeah,
Last week.
yeah.
Yeah, last it was last week. Last week. Last week I came out the closet. That was my coming out the closet, and a lot of people, a few people know. Like a few of my clients, they know. Obviously my girl. Very few people around me know that I'm fully carnivore. Yeah,
Oh,
very few
that's
people
funny.
around me. So that's
Yeah.
like my coming out party. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and is your girlfriend is she sort of doing it too, or is she supportive at
Oh,
least? Yeah.
she's supportive.
Yeah.
She's having a very hard time.
Yeah.
Yeah, she likes whole foods and all that
Mhm.
stuff, and she very much likes her fruits and her juice in the morning, and
Mhm.
between you and I, she's very addicted to that
Yeah.
stuff, right? You know, and
Yeah.
I keep on nagging her with that, but it's a process, and but she's very supportive of me. I love her for this. She's amazing when it comes to that. I'm
Mhm.
trying to get her to transition with the keto. So I sent her a whole lot of stuff on keto, and I said, you know what, start with keto, then at least in February something will go 60 days carnivore. So she's having a hard time with that, but I'm pushing it. I'm
Yeah.
trying. I'm really trying. I'm really trying. Listen, her argument with me is always like, well, I can't believe it. Vegetables are natural. Why would they do this to us? Fruits are natural. And I'm like, listen,
Mhm.
Chippy, if you could explain that to her right now, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, that was always the thing people say, well, it's all natural, and I just
Yeah,
counter back. It's like, so is arsenic, you know? Yeah, that's
yeah,
all these things are natural. And but that's what people think. People do think we're in the Garden of Eden, right? And we think
yes,
that,
yep,
this is everything is just given down to us, the bounty of the Lord, and it's just everything is there for us. But unfortunately, um, plants are living things too, and that's just the way they defend themselves. They defend themselves by being poisonous. And in nature, it's kill or be killed. It's wild out there. It's not nice, and flowing robes and dancing with pixies and fairies and all the animals just loving each other and getting along. That everything is trying to kill everything else, and same with plants as well as animals. So if you are not going to survive out there as a static bush, if you don't have some way of stopping all the deer and rabbits and people from just eating all your leaves and killing you. And so, that is nature. That is natural. The natural existence of plants is being poisonous. And some plants we have more defenses against, and we can detoxify them more readily than others. But I mean, think about it. You get lost out in the woods and you run out of food. You can't just eat any random plant, right? Most plants will make you very sick or even kill you. So that's true of spinach as well. Hemlock is just as actually is more natural than spinach, because spinach has been cultivated. Spinach has been bioengineered to fit a product idea. Hemlock is natural. That's as natural as it can get. It will kill you. Half a leaf will kill you. And so the idea of nature and natural being good for you, just in the broad understanding of nature, is is incorrect. So what's natural for us is good for us, but plants aren't natural for us, because we aren't designed to eat plants as well as, say, a cow. But a cow can eat grass, and they eat specific grasses. They eat other plants. Those plants will kill them because those plants are not natural for a cow. Grass is natural for a cow. Meat is natural for us. Cow is natural for us. And so that's the thing. So when we're talking about natural, that's how we should think about it. What's natural for us, and what's natural for us is eating meat.
I understand that very clearly now, and I'm not finding that. Never will I do. Yeah,
We'll
I
see.
get it now.
Yeah,
That is the proper human diet, and
that's it.
it's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, like, and I noticed there's a big wave right now, specifically in the Black community, where a lot of my peers are going towards like a vegan lifestyle, and it's like, I'm like, wow, because when I started my journey, I was one of the few ones around me in 95, 96. None of my friends, everybody were looking at me, everybody was laughing at me. I was always the center of attention when I would go to a place. Always I would get into debates, arguments. it
Yeah.
was it was crazy, but it kind of sharpened my skills, because I was like,
Mhm.
I would debate with these people, and obviously they weren't really aware, or some of them didn't really know, so it was not much of debates, but I would
Yeah.
like have deep debates. That's why I was able to stay vegan vegetarian for so long, because nobody ever busted my bubble. You know what I mean? I wish
Yeah.
that would have happened earlier, man. I wish.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, yeah, you were ahead of the curve, because, you were, now it's really becoming more and more prevalent, and people are arguing this a lot more. And so it's convincing a lot more people. And I
Yeah.
think in a sense, it's good, because it's getting people to think, it's getting people to be health conscious. And I think people have been health conscious. I think people have been trying to do the right thing. I mean, even since the 1980s, when they said, fat and cholesterol are bad for you, people took that seriously. They stopped eating fat, they stopped eating cholesterol, they stopped eating meat, and they started eating other things that were fat free, heart healthy, and so people have been health conscious for a very long time. I don't think that's the problem. I think it's just that, and so when you came across that and say, like, wow, this is really the healthiest way to go, you latched onto that. And that's I think that's the normal thing to do. I think that's the rational, reasonable thing to do. And because you were ahead of the curve on that end, you knew a lot about things that these guys had no idea. They had no idea how to counter. And so they were just like, look, I just knew fat was bad. I don't, that's all I got. And so you could probably, yeah, get them that way. But I think that, people that go vegan, people that go whatever, it's still the same frame of mind. It's still the right frame of mind, that you're trying to do something good. You're trying to do something positive. You're trying to, benefit your health. You're trying to, potentially benefit the health of the planet, and you're trying to do, nicer things for animals and things like that. all of those are good motivations. And I think, and I share them. Um, so the motivations are right. It's just a matter of getting more of the facts involved and showing that, well, actually nutritionally, this is actually really a better way for us to eat is this other way, and for whatever reasons, and that it can actually help the environment as well. That when you do regenerative agriculture properly, it really helps the environment. And if you're eating, a big ruminant animal, one person is going to need one animal every 2 years or so. And so you're really reducing the amount of, animal suffering and death that has to happen. Whereas when you're making animal, agriculture and crops, there's a lot of field mice and snakes and birds and deer and pigs and kangaroo that have to be killed to protect that crop. And so there was a study out of University of New South Wales in Australia in 2011 that calculated this and said that if you're just eating, big animals, that your your impact on sentient animals is much lower. Obviously, insects are, you're killing these things by the billions to grow these crops with pesticides and bees and things like that. But just sentient animals like mammals and birds and snakes, you have to kill 25 times as many sentient animals to grow 1 pound of plant-based protein as animal-based protein. And if you think about the bioavailability of that protein is much worse in plant protein, I think that number goes up if you're thinking of actual bioavailable protein as well. And so when people learn that same, that same drive and those same motivations, I think is going to be steered in the right direction, I think.
That's great information right there. But I have to say, Dr. Chaffee, I really implore your work and the work of the others Bakers and the Berries and the Elizabeth Brights and the Nortons. I really implore your work, and I pray for you guys, because I'm like, you guys are going against the grain right now. You guys are going against the psychotic big farmers out there, and I every night I pray for you guys, and I say, you know what, you guys are doing such a great work. They're influencing, converting a lot of people, as myself, as people that I've spoken to, that I are trying this, and I'm like, you're changing lives, and you're making people very health aware, very conscious, and not having to rely on drugs if it's not necessary for them. So I really implore your work. I really thank you for what you've done for me and for my friends, and for I'm sure thousands and hundreds of people that have been watching your videos. And I really see clearly right now what's the impact this has on the planet as a whole, not just as me, but on the planet as a whole, and the medical field as a whole as well. I wonder why it's like that. I wonder why the lie is so big. I'm just, dumbfounded by this, you know?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with money. There's a lot of money in this cheap garbage. You think about, potato chips per pound cost more than steak, right? And a
Wow.
potato does not cost as much as steak does to produce, and so there's a massive profit margin there. And same thing with celery and spinach and things like that. Per pound, this is very expensive stuff, and you don't get all the nutrients that you need. So you have to eat all these other things, all these other things, all these other things. So there's a huge profit motive from these companies. They get a lot from plant-based agriculture, and whole foods, maybe not as much, but the processed foods, there's a massive profit margin in these sorts of things. They're very cheap to produce, and they sell them for actually quite a lot, because per pound these things are very expensive. And it's not fun to think about, but there is a profit incentive on people being sick as well. When people are sick, we're spending literally trillions a year treating people who are sick, and we think of that as like, well, that's a good thing. We're able to treat so many people, we're able to help so many people. But a lot of the things that we're treating are a result of the things that we're eating, and we wouldn't need to have them there if we were eating correctly. And so that again, we have the incentives are to give people pills and say, you have this problem, here's this pill. And there's pills that line up with every problem. And so you come into the doctor and the doctor says, this is your problem, this is your pill. And what we do as doctors is try to figure out what the problem is so we can give the appropriate pill or surgery or treatment. Whereas if we say, hey, if you change your diet and your lifestyle, you can actually change your demand for these pills. That's a longer conversation. Talking to someone about diet and lifestyle can take 45 minutes or an hour, whereas it's a 5-minute consultation to come in, prescribe a pill, and go away. And so the incentives, even for the providers, are such that you have 30 people to see. You don't have 45 minutes to an hour with each one. It's not going to happen. There are some places that model in diet and lifestyle, but unfortunately, they're all being influenced by the same sort of vegan, vegetarian, getting rid of meat, getting rid of fat sort of thing. So even when they do give advice, they're giving the wrong advice. And so I think there's a lot of problems there. So it's just the only thing that we can do now is this grassroots sort of movement. People like yourself just taking a look at things and thinking about things and saying, hey, this isn't my health isn't where I want it to be. These guys are saying this will improve dramatically this way. I'll give it a try. Wow, look at that. It does. And then looking into it more and getting all the information you can about it, and then spreading the word. And this is something that's been spreading that way, for the last couple of years. And I think that it will hit critical mass. At this point, it's big enough that people are at least having to talk about it, if not to condemn it. They say, this is a terrible idea, this is a fad, this is a that. At least it's big enough now that they have to recognize it. They have to at least say it's a fad. They have to at least say this is, don't worry about this, or this is a bad idea. Before, it wasn't even on the radar. Before, this was not a thing. And so now they at least have to address it. And so I think that, and no publicity is bad publicity. So when people talk about, oh, this is a this, that, and the other, and people go like, oh yeah, these guys are crazy. And then they come and they start watching. Some of those people are going to watch some of these videos, and some of those people are going to watch conversations like this. And some of those people are going to relate to your experiences and your and the way that you were feeling. And they'll say like, yeah, actually, I do feel like that and I don't like it. And, maybe I'll give this a try and see how it goes. And then they'll see for themselves. So I think even that is going to help us, move forward in this. And then we'll be able to reconsider, what it is to be doctors and what it is to have a medical system. Because I think what medicine used to be is we were treating, accidents and injuries, pregnancy and childbirth, childhood illnesses, and congenital malformations and genetic issues, and then infections, and then like poisonings. Right now, it's all chronic disease. That's all that we're doing. We're just managing chronic diseases, and we're just prescribing all these pills and everything like that. Whereas really, what that is I think that's that fifth one is toxicity and malnutrition. Obviously, not getting enough nutrients. And I think that's really what these chronic diseases are: is malnutrition and toxicities, toxic buildup of a species inappropriate diet and lack of species specific nutrition. And so we're getting those problems from that. And if we just start eating right again, we'll go back to treating just those other main 4 or 5 things. And I think healthcare will look very different. I think it will be much less expensive. I think it will be a much lower burden on everyone's GDP, and everyone can start freeing up that money to go and do more useful things, and everyone will be a lot more healthy and happy. And that's my hope for. That's the reason I do all this, is to hopefully someday get there.
Cool. I have a question for you,
Yeah.
Dr. Chaffee. What do you think of raw foodists? Not people that eat raw meat, but raw foodists. I have my opinion, but I'd like to know, what do you think about people who are fruitarians, or they eat everything raw, they don't eat nothing cooked? What do you think about that? What are the dangers and the consequences of being a raw foodist?
Yeah, well, you're going to open yourself up to even more of the defense chemicals that are in plants. You're going to be even more limited in the things that you're able to eat. A good example of that are beans of all description. They are very toxic, and a lot of these things have a lot of defense chemicals that some of these can just kill you. You know, there's that poison ricin is invariably fatal. It's just a little bit of powder. If it gets on your skin, it'll soak in through your skin and it will kill you. There's no antidote. There's no way to stop it. And that comes from the shell around castor beans. So that's a lectin that exists in beans, and it's there to kill anything that comes near that seed, because a bean is a seed and a seed is a plant's baby. And that's where generally the highest concentration of toxins are, to protect their babies and to stop things from eating the next generation, which is all they're trying to do, is just procreate and make more of themselves. So you can denature some of those lectins by heat treating. You know, you soak kidney beans for 4 hours at least, and then you boil them for 10 minutes at least. And then that will reduce the toxicity of those toxins, and in this case, lectins, but it doesn't completely eliminate them. They still have them in there. But if you eat them raw or even undercooked, it can be even more toxic undercooked than not cooked at all. And on the WHO website, and the WHO is all part and parcel with this, pushing this whole, vegan, vegetarian sort of thing, but they have whole websites dedicated towards just the plant toxins that exist in just everyday plants that we eat all over the world. And they recognize this is like, hey, these are all toxic. You have to prepare these things in certain ways or just avoid them completely. And one of those is kidney beans. They use that as an example. And as little as 5 kidney beans, uncooked or undercooked, can put you in the hospital. And so people that are doing raw food vegan, you're in a bit more of a conundrum, because your options are quite limited, or even more limited now. And so it's going to be much more difficult to get, to eat less toxic food, but also to get a complete set of nutrition, because you're not going to be eating all the beans and legumes and seeds and all these sorts of things that you could otherwise if you were doing it raw, because you really can't eat those things raw safely. Raw meat's
I
fine.
guess it's the same.
Yeah.
Raw
Sushi,
meat is
sashimi, yeah, it's fine. I mean, but that's part of the examples of why you know that this is something that we're naturally designed to eat, because we don't need to put it through a chemical process, heat treatment, or anything like that to extract the nutrients or eliminate toxins. We have the machinery to just eat meat and get everything we want out of meat, like sashimi, steak tartare, things like that, or even just a seared blue steak, or medium rare steak. Like most of the steaks that I eat now are just seared on the outside, and that's it. And they taste great. So yeah, we have all the machinery to eat meat raw.
Okay, but what about the argument that some say, and I still hear it till this day when I have arguments with some people, discussions with some people about meat like staying in your stomach and rotting and whatever for a long time. What about that argument when they try to say, well, you'll eat the meat and it'll stay and you'll get toxin from it, but for it staying in your stomach for so long? What about that?
Yeah. So the counter to that is, what's the benefit of eating fiber? What's their point about fiber, right? It's that you can't digest it. You can't break it down. And so it moves through your digestion. So if you couldn't digest meat, if you couldn't break it down, wouldn't that do the same thing? Wouldn't that just be a lump of, hamburger just mushing through, and then you just defecate that out? But you don't, right? So you actually absorb 98, 99% of the meat that you eat. If there's no gristle in it, it would be 100%. And so, and even if you didn't, even if you couldn't break it down, even if it just sat there and didn't digest, you would excrete it in waste. That's what fiber is. So they've got these mutually exclusive ideas. They say that you can't break down meat, and that's a problem, and it sits there and rots, and it takes 10 years to break down, and that's bad. And then on the other side, they say you cannot break down fiber at all. You cannot break it down. You cannot absorb it, and that's good. Which one is it? They're both saying the same thing about these different things, and they're saying that one's good and one's bad, right? So if indeed it took 10 years to break this stuff down, where is it spending that time? Your intestine, last time I checked, is just a tube. It goes one way, so it goes in here, in a certain number of hours, it's going out the other end if it's not absorbed into your body. So if it were to take 10 years to break down, it wouldn't be staying in your body for 10 years. It would just be out of your body. So, and fiber, you can never break that down. You do not have the capacity to break down fiber. No vertebrate animal can break down fiber. Only certain microorganisms can break down fiber. And because of the transit time through our guts, it moves so quickly. We don't have that. We have an appendix, little tiny thing, in gorillas and chimpanzees and other koalas and other sorts of things. They're called hind gut digesters. That little appendix is actually several feet long. And it's a blind pouch. And that's where fiber packs in and gets stuck there. And it just sits and sits and sits and ferments and breaks down into short chain fatty acids, which are actually what you absorb. So you eat or these animals will eat the fiber, but what they absorb is fat and protein. And we eat animals that are fat and protein. That's the whole point. The animals kingdom runs on fat and protein, mostly fat. And so if you can't derive fat and protein from plants, then you need to eat animals that have already done the work for you. And that's why 66% of animals in the world are carnivores, because they don't have the ability to turn plant tissue into animal tissue. So we have to eat animal tissue in order to build animal tissue. And that's the whole idea of eating, is you're building and maintaining meat. So what's going to have everything that you need? Meat, right? Mm-hmm. You're just cutting out the middleman. We're not trying to build celery here. We're trying to build meat. And so if you eat meat, you will be able to build meat. And so the fact is that you liquefy and absorb like a steak within a couple hours, and almost none of it will come out. The reason that people think like, oh, well, I'm constipated is like, I'm not going to the bathroom as much. Well, that's because you're absorbing 98% of the meat that you're eating. So nothing's coming out. You don't have waste to come out. So it's not that this is all just sitting there getting bigger and bigger and backed up and backed up. Some people get very nervous and they'll say, well, I have to take laxatives every few days just so I can get going. I was like, you don't need to. There's nothing there for you. And I asked them, I was like, did you have some big, massive, clog, stuck there that then came out? And they're like, well, no, it was all liquid. Well, that means that you didn't have anything there that needed to come out. And so there wasn't anything blocked. There wasn't anything stuck there. You've just absorbed everything and there's very little waste coming out. Contrast that with, eating a lot of fiber. Like you say, you're going to the bathroom several times a day because you have all this stuff that your body can't use. And it's just trying to get rid of it because it can't use it. So, so anytime someone says that, oh, if you just eat steak, it's just going to sit there for 10 years, just ask them where is it going to sit? It's a one-way tube. Where is it going to sit? We don't have that blind outpouching that, gorillas have, and they use that for fiber. And again, fiber, you can never break that down. And so is that a good thing or a bad thing? Then why wouldn't it also be a good thing for meat as well? Which if it did, which it didn't, that's the whole thing. There's so many things wrong with that that it's hard to know where to start.
I mean, I hear a lot of about the iodine. I hear a lot. What about the iodine argument? Because I hear a lot of stuff about iodine. What about this? Is it necessary for if we're a carnivore or anybody to take that as a supplement, or do we get it in our meats, or is it prevalent in the meat?
You should get it in your meat. It also depends on what the meat's eating. If it's in an area that there's iodine in the soil and that's getting into plants and that's getting into them. There are people that can develop goiters because they're not producing enough thyroid hormone, so they're getting a lot of thyroid stimulating hormone. It's just growing, and that can be an indication that you're not getting enough iodine. If you're not getting enough iodine for whatever reason, maybe it's not in the food supply in your area, maybe that the animals that you're consuming don't have enough of it in their food source, then supplementing with some iodine isn't a bad idea, or having some seafood every now and then that has some iodine. I haven't supplemented with that. I've never gotten goiters. My thyroid function has always been very good. Is it bad to supplement with iodine? Probably not. Dr. Barry does a good video on this where he talks about iodine and how the Japanese, because of all the seafood that they eat, they're eating thousands of times more iodine than you'd get elsewhere, and they do fine. They don't have any health ramifications from that amount of iodine. So, even supplementing with much less than that, but more net potentially than we would normally recommend, is probably very safe. And so, I think that because there are so many differences in the nutritional value of plant versus animal based meat and nutrition, that we really we'll have to relook at our RDAs, the recommended daily allowances, because some people, they'll say, well, how do you get this? And how do you get this? Well, I don't know, but my bloods all say that I do. So, there's obviously something going on there. They're saying, no, you need this much in order to be, to have a proper amount of whatever nutrient that is. And yet by eating just meat, I have plenty of that. So it's obviously there's something else going on there. Obviously those RDAs are not accurate. These were done almost 100 years ago by Ansel Keys, who's a known liar and a known fraud and known to be bought and paid for by the sugar companies and put out a lot of fake information and studies for the sugar companies to say that cholesterol causes heart disease when it was really sugar. So we know he's a fraud. So we can't really trust anything that guy says. Even if he was a good scientist at one point in his life, he's a fraud and a charlatan. So who knows when that started? Who knows what he was being paid off for and what he wasn't? Everything he's ever done is suspect. Also, when he was looking at the RDAs, he was looking at things in the context of a mixed diet. So everyone was eating plants and fruits and carbs and meat and all these different sorts of things. That changes what you need. I did a talk on low carb down under. It was a medical conference, and it was called "Just Plants Are Trying to Kill You." And I talk about that in there. And there's all these different sorts of ways that plants either sequester nutrients, they either bind up these different nutrients so they're not bioavailable because they're bound up in such a way that we don't have the machinery to get them out, meaning that we're not meant to eat that. And so we'll get vitamin deficiencies if we're eating this, even though that plant has a lot of those vitamins in it, or iron or whatever. And also they have nutrient disruptors and digestive disruptors and anti-nutrients. So like phytic acid will bind to different minerals. They will make them unavailable to us. Oxalates will do the same thing. Protease inhibitors, where like in wheat and soy, they'll block our enzymes that help us break down different proteins. So even in perfectly bioavailable protein from meat, this will stop the enzymes that break it down into amino acids so that we can absorb it. So even then, even though we would normally be able to absorb all of this, we can't now. And then a lot of the protein like gluten, that's completely unavailable to us. That's a protein. That's part of wheat protein. That's calculated to say like, oh, look at all this protein in wheat. 80% of that is gluten. All of that is unavailable to us. And that's before the protease inhibitors, right? So you say like, oh, this is how much nutrients are in there, and this is how much we need to get proper nutrition. That's wrong, because all of these things are disrupting how we absorb vitamins and minerals and nutrients. And so if you're only eating meat, you need a very different constellation of nutrients, because everything in that steak you're getting. And whereas if you're eating a mixed diet, it completely disrupts that. And so, when you're eating a mixed diet, you will simply need more vitamins, minerals, proteins, and fats than you would if you're not eating a mixed diet. So that's something to think about as well. Even when you're just eating carbohydrates, you need a lot more vitamin C than you would otherwise. So when you're eating carbohydrates, you need vitamin C measured in milligrams, right? And you need at least, and this is what's taught, is that you need at least 10 milligrams of vitamin C a day to stop scurvy. And recommended 90 to 120 grams, for normal health, right? If you don't eat carbohydrates, your vitamin C requirements are in nanograms. So it's 1 millionth the
Hmm.
dose. So you need 1 million times less,
Wow.
uh, vitamin C than if you're eating carbohydrates. So you need very different nutrients based on what you're eating now. So I think that it's I think that we need to re-examine our recommended daily allowances in the context of a carnivore diet, because it's very, very, very different. And so they say, like, well, there's not enough iodine in meat, and yet there is, right? Because I don't have a goiter, you don't have a goiter. The Inuits
Hmm.
don't have goiters. Now they're eating a lot of seafood and things like that. Probably actually have quite a lot of iodine in their diet. But the Maasai don't have goiters, and they're not having thyroid issues. If you have thyroid issues, it's very serious. You can die from that, and you're very unwell and you're very unhealthy, and you feel really, really bad and just rotten and miserable. But also, if you have low thyroid and while you're pregnant, you'll have serious deleterious effects and developmental defects with your kid called cretinism. That's where that term comes. People call it like, "Oh, you cretin." That's where that came from. It's a medical term, and it's from congenital hypothyroidism. You have too little thyroid, and the kid doesn't develop properly, and so they have specific facial deformities. They're much smaller, they're short stature, and their brains are smaller, and they're of lower intelligence. They have a intellectual delay as well, and if that perpetuates throughout childhood, they'll get worse and worse and worse and worse. And so that's not something that is possible to survive with. If we're not getting enough iodine from our natural diet, then obviously, we're not going to make it past a generation or two, because everyone's going to end up with cretinism. No one's going to be able to survive, and everyone's going to die out. So whatever we're getting out of meat, I think is just fine. Like if you're having a problem and you're having some health issues, or you take your bloods or whatever for just just a wellness check once a year or twice a year, and you find that you're deficient in certain things, sure, I think supplementing is a great idea, because for whatever reason you're low, you are low, right? And so I would just top that up with some supplement, maybe a bit of iodine, just eating a bit more seafood. Um, you know, Cows that are raised closer to the coast will have more iodine in their meat, just because there's more sort of sea spray and iodine coming from the ocean, getting in the grass, in the soil, and they're eating that. So they're having it. More inland cows, they're not going to get as much exposure to that supply of iodine. However, it could be that these people, the ranchers and things like that, are supplementing somewhere. I don't know. I'm not involved in that process, but um, it does depend on where your food's coming from. But for whatever reason, if you're low on iodine and your thyroid is being affected, I think that's perfectly fine to supplement. Yeah. Long-winded answer, but we got there in the
No,
end.
no,
Yeah.
it's excellent. It's excellent. It's very, very clear. It's good to know these things. Um, I also another thing that got me to stick to you when I was watching your videos. I was like, I realized that you are a Thomas Sowell proponent, and I was like,
Oh,
yes,
love the guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
I love,
absolutely.
I love him
Yeah.
too. And I was like, yo, I was like, you're the truth. Once I
Yeah.
heard you say that, I paid even more attention to your
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah. No, Thomas Sowell is
Yeah.
amazing, man. Like,
Oh
he's,
yeah, man.
yeah. No, I honestly think that he's the most brilliant and well-developed thinker that America has ever produced. And I don't say that
And
lightly. I think
yeah,
he's just brilliant and well
brilliant.
and a well-developed thinker. That's what I mean. I think he has a true genius, and coupled
Absolutely.
with the rare addition of common sense as well, having
Exactly. Yeah.
genius and common sense, which is something he said of Milton Friedman. He was one of the few people that had, genius and common sense, and Sowell
Yeah.
definitely that can be applied to. But he's an extraordinarily well-developed thinker. He has his
Absolutely.
massive, massive intellect, brilliance, and common sense that has been so well developed and refined that it's something very, very rare. It's a very, very rare thing.
Yeah.
in any society at any time. These are
Yeah.
some of the people like, like a Marcus Aurelius or a Socrates or a Plato, someone that really shone out even in their time with a lot of other brilliant people. I think Soul is definitely one of those people.
I agree. Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Well, is reading him, and seeing and, cutting to the quick on a lot of these subjects that a lot of people take for granted, or maybe put a lot of time and effort and thought and go, yes, this is what it is. And then Soul just digs to the bedrock of the issue and say, this is what's going on. This is the history. These are the facts. And this is what they're not telling you. And you just go, wow, okay, look at that. And it just, no one has, no one digs down deeper to the bedrock of an issue to get at what's actually happening as Saul does. And he has a particular genius for explaining extraordinarily complex systems and issues in very straightforward and accurate terms, and making it very relatable to everyone. So he's just, yeah, he's a special person. And like reading his works and seeing how he analyzes things and dissects things and looks for things and saying, okay, is this actually what's happening? That's really helped me in what I do, and paying attention to things to find out, okay, what is actually happening here in health and and just reading things in medicine. So many studies are just based on nothing. They're based on nothing. They're based on a good guess at the time that was just repeated so many times that it just started showing up in textbooks, and no one actually worked back to the origin and say, okay, what was that based on? Was that based on good, hard science and evidence and facts? And you look back and you find out, no, it was not. And then when you do the studies, when you actually look at the evidence, you find out, no, that is not what's going on. And so Soul has definitely helped me with that. No, he's brilliant. Like I absolutely love that guy. He's basically 95% of the books I've read in the last 6 years have all been his.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I love
Love
that
it.
guy. Yeah.
Me too, man.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, cool. Well, Dazzle, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us and spending time, out of your day to help pass along this information and hopefully inspire someone else in your position 6 years ago to make some changes in their life and help their health for the better. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor. I appreciate you taking the time to talking to somebody like me. It was cool. It was fun. And I hope to inspire and help other people in their journey as well. That's really my goal to kind of to spread the word, man. Like be part of this grassroots movement that I see going on, and that's spreading like wildfire.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Well, I'm sure it will, man. And and I'm sure a lot of people really appreciate the your story and for what you had to say. So yeah, looking forward to getting this out there and getting more people on board.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Cool.
sir.
All right, man. We'll see you later.
Okay. Okay.